Welcome to another day in the Matrix. Today's presentation is dedicated to the Federal Reserve System's newest service called FedNow, which essentially lays the foundation to implement a CBDC, a central bank digital currency, such as what you might have heard is called FedCoin, which will not be implemented at the launch of this new FedNow service, but I'm sure most of you that are tuning into this today can see the writing on the wall. So not only for the US banking system, but all banks across the board. The launch of this new FedNow service just gets the ball rolling in that direction. So to kick this off, I'll actually be answering a couple frequently asked questions that I've been receiving lately regarding my own thoughts on this new FedNow service and the role cryptocurrency has in it. So I'll be giving an introduction breaking down what this FedNow service actually is and answering a couple of frequently asked questions along the way, and then we'll pivot over to the Decode to start connecting all the dots esoterically. So I'm really looking forward to sharing this presentation with you all today, and I hope you're all having an incredible start to this new month of July, of course named after Julius Caesar. And what better date to launch this Decode than on the birthday of the parasitic IRS. You could see right there, formed on July 1st, 1862. This theft institution officially has 161 years of criminal history under its belt. What an accomplishment. And speaking of the IRS and Julius Caesar, I actually brought up his birthday of July 12th in my last Red Pill podcast, number 117, and I exposed some important connections to the day before, which is on July 11th. And if you take from the US tax deadline, which is on April 18th, and connect it to July 11th, I found another thing that's important to bring up, which is 2 months and 23 days apart, which is the 223. Of course, we're in the year of 223, which is the mirror of 322, the number tied to skull and bones, also known as Order 322. And I was just talking about how the IRS turned 161 years. Their Wikipedia page has yet to update, but you could double check that if you like. Anywho, this is very important that I just brought up this connection to July 11th, considering that we talked about 161, and July 11th's date numerology is 61 and 16. Of course, 161 being the palindrome of the number 16, and here you are having this tie all together. So it adds even more emphasis to this date that I decoded last week. Again, we're connecting this date tied to Julius Caesar's birthday and back to the last tax date deadline. So we're getting esoteric right off the bat here. I hope you guys are enjoying this. So you're probably aware of the key dates that I've been speaking about recently after this upcoming 4th of July. And the United States Independence Day. We have the full moon the day before, which happens to just be a couple days away, this upcoming Monday on July 3rd. Monday is Moon Day, so what better day to have a full moon than on a Monday? It's definitely symbolic. And of course, I'll be catching you all up to speed with a market update tomorrow on my newest Red Pill podcast, so stay tuned for that. And now, before we get started on today's FedNow Decoded, just a quick disclaimer. This content is not financial advice. I, Waters Above, am not a financial advisor. This content is for entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research and use any materials in this content as entertainment materials and not financial, investment, tax, or legal advice. So let's just jump straight into it. What is FedNow? And I quote, FedNow is the Federal Reserve's new instant payment service that will enable customers at participating banks and credit unions to send and receive money within seconds. What does that sound like? So you'll be able to send this money within seconds, 24/7, and every day. Essentially every day of the year, no breaks. So you'd be able to complete payments or transfers on weekends, holidays, and after banks' business hours, which isn't the case for standard online transfers such as through the Automated Clearinghouse Network, which you usually see as the acronym ACH transfers, which are typically processed in batches and tend to take 1 to 3 business days to complete. So the FedNow service has actually been in the public's awareness for several years now, and many conspire that this service will replace things such as PayPal, Cash App, and other payment service providers. But my intuition tells me that the apex predator actually created, funded, and currently controls companies such as PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, and Alipay. Obviously, these are the sexy, techy, cool and sleek versions of this FedNow idea. But to allow retail to transact out of the quote unquote old and antiquated banking system, and to sell it on them as a more convenient and ideal way to transact. And where it gets a little deeper is that many people initially thought that they could utilize these payment provider apps such as PayPal to evade having their payments traced within the so-called normal banking system. But little did they know, this stuff was created to track and trace all of your payments as we started to move away from cash transactions over the years. So now I personally have no issue with PayPal, Cash App, or any of these tech companies. It is what it is. You decide on a personal level either if you want it to be a tool or a weapon. That is all. And that's ultimately how it will always be regarding these new technological advancements in the world. You could decide to react or you can decide to respond. And I advise us as wolves, as enlightened beings, to not get caught up in conspiring so much in negativity, because when the time comes where we have these new technologies, a lot of the times we're forced into some of this stuff and we're left there being the one who just complained about it, but now we're using it. So it's best to stay neutral in the process. I'm not telling anyone to give in to anything. I'm just saying, remind yourself that we're in a simulacrum. We're in a simulated experience, and all it's trying to do is get fear out of you. Don't give it any fear. We're starting this decode off instantly with this sort of essence because it's important. You see where I stand on this whole decoding process, apart from maybe some other educators out there. I don't want any of this to instill fear onto people. This isn't fear porn. This isn't about feeling like the new world order is taking over, because that's not how it is. It is always you capable of tapping into it as a tool, while most people have it as a weapon formed against them. So I personally have had more positive experiences with things like PayPal than negative experiences, and it ultimately does the job that I need it to do, sometimes even more effectively than the traditional retail banks, and even sometimes with better customer service representatives when a problem surfaces. But I bring this all up to say, don't get it twisted. They gave us all of these years of PayPal and Cash App to get us used to this way of transacting, slowly migrating us away from cash and physical money. And this makes all those what used to be cash transactions now traced and tracked within said payment provider systems, which then these companies are obligated to send out tax forms to your taxation agency wherever you live. This solves the problem for governments of people avoiding reporting payments or sales tax, etc. So, all of what we're getting into right now is actually something I've been speaking about in the past. I've shared my theories about the changes I see coming for the economy and where Elon Musk fits into all of it with taking over Twitter. You can find that here in my decode titled World Reserve Decoded. Definitely check that out if you haven't already. It's packed with gems, and it's just the start of a string of decodes I have in the works, which this decode I'm presenting you today is actually part of. You can almost consider this a part 3 in that series. So this, another future decode that will build off of this one will be about the importance of the year 2024, the year of the dragon, especially for investors. But for now, let's get back to today's decode on the Federal Reserve's new FedNow service, which allegedly plans to launch in July 2023. Apparently, more than 120 banks and payment providers have been part of the pilot program since the start of 2021. And now, leading into the tentative launch date, there will be about 57 organizations, including financial institutions and service providers such as BNY Mellon, JP Morgan Chase, US Bank, and Wells Fargo, just to name a few. So, of course, there's been many sensationalized theories around this new FedNow service, especially regarding XRP, and much of this has been debunked over the years. Also, as FedNow is not, competing against any other cross-border payment systems. I mean, come on, it's the Federal Reserve. Who do they need to compete with? They literally own the world. Literally. So if this life was a video game, and it is, the Federal Reserve would be the final boss. There's no one for them to compete against. I just want to get that out of the way early because I've been getting a lot of these frequently asked questions, and I promised you guys I want to cover some of that stuff in the beginning to get that out of the way before we pivot over into the decode. So many people want to know if FedNow will be tied to any particular cryptocurrency. And as far as an individual cryptocurrency that you are aware of or can even name off the top of your head, the short and sweet answer is no. And FedNow will not utilize XRP or any of Ripple's services. It will not use XLM, Stellar Lumens, or Quant, or HBAR, or any of the cryptos that you're aware of. Now, the only isolated crypto project that we're aware of allegedly having ties to FedNow was through their provider showcase back in 2022 regarding a crypto called Ethereum, which I have covered in Red Pill Podcast 103. I'm just going to quickly Google this real quick in case you're not sure of what I'm talking about. And it's this crypto right here. You could go check out their website. They also have it token that's trading live on the market. As I said, I covered it in Red Pill Podcast number 103. Their ties to FedNow was allegedly offering a service that will connect financial institutions looking to adopt and innovate upon the FedNow service, with service providers offering instant payment solutions. So, what does this mean in English? Ethereum is essentially the bench warmers who are going to recruit for the Federal Reserve by marketing this new service to their other organizations. They are essentially the Jehovah's Witnesses of the CBDC realm. Jokes aside, FedNow will not be using Ethereum's token at all. And from what I remember about analyzing the Ethereum chart, it was not looking good. Venture capital investment at best, but hey, if you have $100 laying around and you want to play around with it, have fun. Not financial advice, of course, and I'm personally not interested in this project at all. After analyzing it enough, I think it was just too much FedNow conspiracy theories built around this, and again, a lot of it being debunked, especially as we get closer to the FedNow launch date. Just one moment, I'm going to take a sip of water. Okay, so although FedNow will not be using any particular crypto or any blockchain that operates that you're already aware of, another alleged FedNow service provider is something called Metal Blockchain, a crypto network developed by Metallicus based off of a fork of Avalanche's code. The integration of Metal Blockchain with FedNow will allow users to instantly convert cash to stable coins for use in DeFi protocols. So you could look more into Metal Blockchain and do some research if that's something you're interested in, but I'll be sharing my final statements, particularly on this later in the decode. So let's move over into the code, and first, let's build some foundation. So the Federal Reserve System is what we're talking about today, established in December 23rd of 1913, which was 109 years ago. And if you connect it to this date of July 1st, kicking off the month of July, back to December 23rd of their launch in 1913, you're going to see this is 109 years and 190 days. And you want to remove the zeros using the rules of numerology, and you're going to get the number 19 twice. So you have here 19 for the years and 19 for the days. The date numerology for the Federal Reserve was established in 12/23/1913, and you're going to see right here it has a 67 as the date numerology, and I love using double digit date numerology, and that 67 is the 19th prime number. Okay, so this is really crucial because right off the bat here, we're starting with the basics and we're seeing this code play itself through just with the dates, right? So we have 109 years, 190 days, that's 1919, leading into this month of July, where we will have the implementation of this new FedNow service going off the date that the Federal Reserve was established, which had a 67 date numerology, which is the 19th prime. So this is great. We have a lot of connections really early on, and this is a number that you guys can take a note on, 19. So, of course, this decode is dedicated to the FedNow service. I'm just going to go over here and I'm going to copy this because I want to save your time today. And you could see FedNow service equals 67, just like the Federal Reserve's founding date was on a 67 date numerology, and that's 67, of course, the number 19 again, back to the 19th prime. And we all know how important the number 19 is now that we had a 2-year global pandemic called the C19. You know what I mean. And 19, of course, being the numbers 1 and 9, and 1 tied to A, you could see that right there, and 9 tied to I, which would be AI, artificial intelligence, the abbreviation. So let's just go into the code of artificial intelligence for a moment. I know we haven't really done too much decoding on AI itself. Maybe we will in the future. If you guys are interested in that, go ahead and comment that below. But we could see artificial intelligence has this key number of 68. And I've been talking about that number a lot lately in my work since that gem that I discovered on the XRP 2-day chart. And of course, coming back to the gematria, we had stock equaling 68. We had market equaling 68. I showed you how the origin of the word money, which comes from moneta, equals 68. And the 68th element on the periodic table is erbium, and erbium equals 68. And 68 has the encroaching numbers of 67 and 69. We just talked about these 67 connections to FedNow moments ago, and we've spoken many times about the significance of 69 in the code, especially since Bitcoin hit the all-time high of $69,000. And since we've had so many rituals occur on the world stage with that number, such as Silicon Valley Bank failing on the 69th day of this year, then we had the Queen die at 96, which is the mirror of that number. We had so many of these. Again, maybe check out my last YouTube video because I go over a lot of those connections again since the recent Titan submersible ritual, which is tied to what I was calling the 2023 Titanic ritual. And we saw how that played out. That was something that I shared so many months before it actually came to this, reality in this year. And I mean, it's pretty incredible because it was a 111-year cycle that I was discussing, and it was ritualized. So it shows you that this code works. Again, I'm not taking credit for it. I'm just in my process of remembering, and I'm helping you remember too. So going back to this artificial intelligence thing, we have the 23. Again, in the rules of numerology, you're going to remove that 0. That ties you back to the number 23. We're in the Hebrew year of 5,783. Again, adds up to 23. So no wonder why this year of all years, we are hearing a lot about things like ChatGPT and OpenAI, with Apple coming out with their new VR headset glasses. So this has been the talk of the town lately, and this makes even more sense because AI being the first letter and the 9th letter in the alphabet, then AI adds up to 10 in just basic gematria. 10 is your ones and zeros. That's your binary code, the matrix, the simulacrum. You'll see a lot of this code reduced down to 1 again, back to the start of the sequence or coming full circle. Remember how many times before I told you about the number 67 and how that is the 19th prime. Well, 19 is 1 plus 9 is 10, and this is where you see what I'm talking about. So the mirror of 19 is the number 91. We always want to think of the mirror of every number. And here we are with Federal Reserve FedNow. We're just combining the popular name of the company and the name of this new service. And there you go. You have 91, the mirror of the number 19. Then the mirror of that key number 67 that we were talking about earlier would be 76. And of course, we have here with just Federal Reserve System giving you 76 in Chaldean. It's very important. You guys know that Ripple equals 76. You know they play a huge role in this future economy with CBDCs and with a quantum-like system, a cashless society, etc. You're well aware of this. So we already have some key numbers, guys. We have the number 67. You're always going to want to mirror these numbers. That gives you 76. And then naturally off of that 67, you have the 19th prime number, okay? 19. And what we were showing you before with AI, 1 and 9 is A and I in the alphabet. Then this code right now has a nice foundation. So I hope you're taking notes on this, because this is the kind of stuff that I'm going to be teaching, in the future with my new decoding mastermind that I'm working on right now. And, once you have all the symbology figured out and you're able to look at things and be able to determine and break down their symbols, then you're going to be able to see the letters and the numbers within, and then it's going to start to make so much more sense. But I like keeping this stuff basic because I want everyone to walk away with lots of value in these decodes. So going back to the prime numbers of 67 and the 19th prime, the number 19 is actually the 8th prime number, and the Federal Reserve's birthday is on the day leaving 8 days in the year. So right before the end of the year, you can see this 8 days left, and this will actually be during the year of the dragon. So that's really important. Again, we're moving into that year, 2024 next year, which is, sorry, let me slow down because I don't want to confuse people. I wasn't talking about 1913. I was talking about the numerology and how it all adds up. So I just want to slow down and clear everything up. Let me go back because I might be confusing some people. We were talking about the number 8. I showed you this Federal Reserve birthday, 8 days left in the year. Then we have FedNow right here. Let me show you by the code, giving you this 35. 3 and 5 equals 8. Then next year, we're moving into the year 2024. The numerology of this year adds up to 8 because we have 2 plus 2 plus 4. All right. Obviously, 2 plus 2 plus 4 equals 8. So next year is a number that numerologically adds up to 8 in the Gregorian system. And as for the year 5784, it adds up to 24 when we're doing it with the Hebrew system. So this is big, this 24, because I've taught you guys that the symbolism behind 24 comes back to the Jupiter zodiac logo. I don't want to get too advanced right now. Again, I'm going to be doing a full comprehensive year of the dragon decoded, as I do with every Chinese zodiac every year. So again, just wanted to clear up what I was saying before about the number 8. So I do believe next year will be very important for the Federal Reserve System based in this code of the number 8 and the fact that at the end of that year, it will be their 111th anniversary. So of course, this year it'll be moving into the 110th. And then next year in 2024, at the end of the year, it'll be the 111th, right? Now, why is this so important? Because I was able to use that 111 code to determine that there would be a Titanic ritual on this year because we were on the 111th anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic on April 15th. And we just had the Ocean Gate Titan submersible ritual recently. That 111 code is no joke. And for anyone that has doubt in that decode, now you see the method to my madness and how it actually works. It still even blows my mind sometimes, even with the fact that we're always prepared for these things in advance. And what's so important about this 111 is that ties back to the state of New York, which of course the New York Stock Exchange is operating out of, but the date of 9/11, I could show you that right here, leaves 111 days in the year. And this 9/11 date is so close to the end of this Jubilee that we're about to finish off just a week after this pretty much. And it's telling me that as we come across that 9/11 anniversary and this 111 code and how it was tied to New York equaling 111, we could very well have a New York ritual this year leading into perhaps that fall time. So anyways, it's this 111 code tied to the Federal Reserve that is making me think the Federal Reserve still has, a lot of juice left in it, especially over the next year. And I think they will have a lot of power in determining how this market will behave for the next year until that 111th year, which aligns perfectly with the theory that I've been sharing with you guys about a 2024 Q4 bull run leading into perhaps Q1 2025. For something like an alt season. So let's move over to the key player in this game of the Federal Reserve, and that is this guy over here. If I could call him a guy, I don't really know what he is. I don't even know if he's a human, but this is the current chairman of the Federal Reserve, and his name is Jerome Powell. As you can see, Now we're going to start to get in a new section of the code that you guys can start to take some notes on. And Jerome Powell adds up to 56 in Chaldean. And you can see right here that the name Federal Reserve also has 56 in it in the same cipher. Now he was born on February 5th. Let me double check this just to be sure. Sorry. You could see this right here. He was born on February 4th. He took office on February 5th. But let me show you that by the code. And his birth year was 1953. So we're going back to his birth year, and on February 4th, 1953, and he became the chairman of the Federal Reserve on February 5th of 2018. This is where we're going to tie some things together because he holds this key position now. And you can see right here that it is 65 years pretty much on his birthday. And why that matters so much is that shows you that this number 56 is tied to his code heavily. I showed you his name equals 56 and Federal Reserve equals 56, and he becomes the Federal Reserve's chairman on his 65th year of life. That's the mirror of the number. So very, very interesting. So now he's currently 70 years old, which is important because this Queen of England just had her Platinum Jubilee, which was 70 years as queen, and she died shortly after, meaning this 70 is a completion number in a more esoteric sense. Note, the Shemitah is a 7-year cycle. Then you have 7 cycles of 7, which is a super cycle we call Biblical Jubilee, which is practiced on the 50th year after those 7-year cycles. Then you have 10 cycles of Shemitah, which is 70 years. And this to me is starting to make more sense why the number 69 is so critical in all of this and why it's been ritualized so much over these past couple of years. Of course, the capstone on the Royal Arch is the logo of Cancer, which is 69, the crab. Anyways, we're going to be getting into that again in the future in my new decoding course and kind of tying that all in. But it's, again, by the market and by the code and by what we've been seeing happen a lot this year, that number 69 is so crucial. And it's making me think it's the number before that full completion of 70, which would be 10 cycles of 7. So because it's moving into the number 70, which is numerologically coming back to 7 again, it's making a lot of sense to me. This guy, Jerome Powell, is on his 70th year, and now being 70 in this crucial role as the chairman of the Federal Reserve, and we've had so much going on with inflation and watching other currencies across the world just completely tank. It's wild to watch all the printing they did in 2020, which leads us up to this moment now, and we're watching tech stocks, some of them hitting new all-time highs like Apple. It almost makes no sense. We are really in la la land when it comes to how just nonsensical this market operates at this time. But most of you here already know it's just fake. It's bread and circus. And if you know this code, you'll be able to understand why it operates the way it does. So this year, on the 110th anniversary of the Federal Reserve System, which we're going to be moving into in, about a half a year from today, this will be on December 23rd of 2023, and connecting to Jerome Powell's birthday is really interesting. So we have Jerome Powell's birthday over here. We have 12/23, and we're going to type in this year of 2023. And you're going to see how he'll be 70 years old and 322 days, the 322. All right? That's the skull and bones connection. It's very important because this whole year has been filled with skull and bones symbolism. We had the Kansas City Chiefs win the Super Bowl. I shared in my Decode before that Super Bowl even happened a big skull and bones reveal, which had everything to do with the foundation of the Skull and Bones Yale Secret Society in the same time frame as the Trail of Tears and the Indian Removal Act. I mean, it was pretty mind-blowing. The two things that really set me on course for picking the Chiefs was that connection, followed by the connection of Doug Williams That was amazing. That race card that they picked, to play throughout the NFL that year. And now, if you look at it on this side with the NBA finals, it ended up being a white guy from Serbia who gets all the prana in a predominantly, So it's like, it's just so interesting how they play these games in the Matrix, and they get all your prana on material things, and has nothing to do with spirituality, but it dictates the spirit. It's pretty fascinating how these magicians operate. So this 70 and 322 connection, I think, is pretty interesting. Also being 10 months and 19 days. That's the 119, or the mirror of 9/11. I mean, you could chop this up in several ways, but it is just interesting, especially because this will be some months after we have the implementation of the FedNow service, as well as we have September and October to get through. And this will be Saturnalia. Okay, so December 23rd is the last day of Saturnalia, tied to Saturn, and look at how it lands on a Saturday this year. So that's very, very important to mention. Considering those two cycles that I talked about before, the 7 cycles of 7 being 49 and the 7 cycles of 10 being 70, and if we actually take 70 and 40 minus 49, let's consider taking 70 away from 49, you're going to see we get back to 21. And that again ties us back to Saturn. 21 by the code. Now, 21 is 3 7s, 7 plus 7 plus 7. That's your jackpot number. So after 49 years, you go into your Jubilee on the 50th year. Then you need to go all out for the next 21 years. And I think that's exactly the way that this world's going to go moving forward. And having this talk of the FedNow service and these big changes in the central banking system, it's really, as I brought up in the introduction, the writing's on the wall. So now think about the last Jubilee I considered being 1973. So with this theory that I'm sharing with you now, we had the 1973 time frame, and it should really be 1971 if I was to utilize, my full system, but just to keep this bare bones and as simple as possible, we have from the Jubilee, which is your 49-year cycle, and then on your 50th, and then you remove that from the 70, you have this 21, and it's bringing you to 1994. So this was the year of the bond market crisis, of course, also on a Shemitah year. So then 7 years after this, they did the dot-com bubble and the World Trade Center ritual, which I was just talking about moments ago, to look out for a World Trade or perhaps a New York ritual at the September timeframe of this year. Now, this is again all happening during Shemitah years, and we're out of that cycle right now, but plenty of information pointing to an event that's coming soon. So putting this into context in our current cycle, we have from now, which is 2023, because we were just talking about taking a Jubilee year and adding 21 years to it. You have 2023 plus 21, and that takes you all the way out to 2044. So this next 21 years will be dramatic changes, just like from 1973 to 1994. And back during that time, there was the 1973 to 1975 recession. From August 1974 to December 1974, the Dow Jones took a nosedive. That would be comparable to September or December of this year, considering the amount of days from the current all-time high to that time. So keep that in mind. If we compare these years and cycles, it's uncanny. So the all-time high back then was exactly in the beginning of 1973. Let me show you, kind of give you a visual, a little bit of what I'm talking about here. All right. So here we are. We have this red box is your Shemitah. You have right here is your all-time high. And if you look at the bottom, you're going to see it says 8 January 1973. So that was when your all-time high was setting in. And this is very similar to what we have here, where January at the start of the year during the Shemitah was your all-time high. You could see that by just looking at the bottom of the screen right there. And we sold off into the end of the Shemitah just like we typically do. And then we're looking at 1 year later, which would be at the end of this red box, would be the start of your Jubilee, going all the way till this moment right here, somewhere in the middle of September, the next Rosh Hashanah. So what I was doing is you're measuring exactly about 700 days out, and this is taking you to this time frame right there around December. It's showing you, you know, this cyclical nature going back to this moment right here, where you go from right here on top all the way out about 700 days and you get to your bottom. And quite a nice recovery after that, but you see it settling out in December 1974. So that's kind of the thing that I was bringing up and comparing the 1970s to the beginning of this 2020s era. So now going back to the 70s, shortly after Nixon rage quit in 1974, on August 9th, 1974 to be exact. And remember how I told you about all my predictions for Joe Biden to be removed in August of this year? Well, taking from August 1974 to August 23 this year is 49 years. So let me just show you that really quickly. We have 8. I'll just leave it 1974 over to this year, August. And there we are, just taking some random dates to show you the quick example. And we have that 49 years. That would be your 7 cycles of 7. And this ritual is about to have its Jubilee, if you get what I mean. So adds a little bit more to my theory about specifically the end of August. That was kind of what I thought, somewhere in the very last couple days of August, because it will be 81 days before Joe Biden's 81st birthday, kind of playing on that code of 81. And here you have August 30th giving us an 81 date numerology. This will be the official 81st day before his 81st birthday, and then pivoting over into the 1st of September. Kind of giving this idea that there could be a window of time, because it could be anything. It could be hospitalization, similar to the way the Queen went out, where they kind of leave you in limbo regarding the news for like a week. You know, there's something like of this sort. But that 49 connection, I think, is gold, considering the idea of when Nixon quit versus this connection to my decode that I shared with Biden. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm not going to take my time to do a full-blown Joe Biden ritual decode. It's not really that important to me. I don't really give 2 shits about politics, but I do this decoding stuff and I share it when people are interested, and then you could utilize the code and the strategy. It does seem to be a big find though. And if it does come true, then wow. I mean, to be that specific on that specific date, it's pretty wild. Anyways, this, Nixon's last day as president was on August 9th, 1974. So let's just go to that really quickly. And you're going to see that's a 110 date numerology. Just like this year will be the 110th anniversary of the Federal Reserve System on December 23rd, 2023. It's pretty wild, especially because this is the last day of Saturnalia on a Saturday. That's a mind-blowing gem right there. That 110 connection to Nixon, last day in office, was on a 110 date numerology. You really can't make this up. I mean, even left on the 144 days left in the year. Classic. Quit on a Friday, the last day. It's too funny to me. How much bread and circus and the world believes it. And it's funny now looking at it all this time later. We still have parents, grandparents. I mean, some of us remember these times, and no matter how you resonated with it, or if you cared about it or didn't care about it, you heard of it, and then you had to deal with everyone's prana. Now that you know this decoding system, you're quick to just know, okay, if it's popular, it's nonsense. It's probably nonsense. And it helps you save so much time and energy. It's really beautiful to have the gift back of your own attention. It really is a gift. So this makes me feel even more confident about the current president being removed before the end of this Jubilee on Rosh Hashanah, and I specifically look to this time frame. So after Nixon, we had Gerald Ford, then Jimmy Carter, sort of neutral years, and then into Ronald Reagan, who literally said, and I quote, "Make America great again." I wonder where we heard that recently. Anyways, Reagan had, this era with Reaganomics and pretty much devastated the middle class. But during his presidency from 1981 to 1989, the Dow Jones went up 250% into Black Monday on October 1987. Still, during Reagan's presidency, the Dow Jones was up 170% during his term. He was essentially the president during the entire 1980s. But still, with this concept of Nixon being the president during the last Jubilee in 1973, and especially if Biden goes away during his term is naturally up on January 20th of 2025, this will definitely solidify my theory that we were in Jubilee year during 2023. It's impossible to really determine this stuff because nobody knows 100% when the Jubilee years are. It's probably like the highest level elite in a particular bloodline are aware, and they would never give us any hints of when it is. This is why I'm doing my best to connect all the dots and make these determinations, and I'm pretty damn sure that this is a Jubilee tied back to 1973. And we could have fun with this if you wanted to play with 49-year cycles or 70-year cycles going back to 1776, the alleged independence of the United States away from Britain. And I give you this information so that you could play with it and see how this code is revealed to you. So this FedNow service launching after all the printing the Fed did back in 2020 and 2021 is a similar essence to the Nixon shock and what followed regarding the trend of the stock market. You see where I'm going with this? The market corrected back in 1974 into the end of the year, but then rallied into recovery within 5% of prior highs in the range just 1 year later. That'd be like talking about the year 2024. This would be like if the Dow Jones was to be back at 36,000 points. So right now we're trading at about 34.4. This would be like if the Dow Jones was back at 36,000 points around this 888 fib by January 2025 after correcting to 19,000 points by the end of this year. So imagine something like this. Into this, I mean, it's devastating to think about, but something of this nature, and then coming back up to January 2025 about here. Now, this is not necessarily weird if you're a student of this market, because we had a similar thing happen back in the dot-com bubble, especially for the NASDAQ. Then we had something like this essence back in this financial crisis of 2007, 2008 with the subprime mortgage crisis. I mean, it has happened before. Black Monday, we had, again, recovery rally after that. And then in this moment right here where we had what I'm talking about with you now, this bigger correction into the October timeframe of 74 and then recovery rally back in just a year later. Magical. But what this means is there's a gorgeous buying opportunity underway. And I'm not entirely sure how much all of you are caught up with my work, but if you have not heard me say negative things about October and November of this year, then welcome to the wolf pack. There's a lot for you to catch up on. There's been a lot of repeating of this, not only from my work. I'm hearing a lot of other people that I respect talk about that time frame as well and the expectation of an event. So again, we're all kind of collaborating here to be ahead of this. And right now we're in an incredibly bullish market, so that's nice. So that opportunity that I talked about with this dip would be like getting into the C19 crash, which was this right here, and then riding out a full recovery in just a single year. So now I'm not saying that this will happen with 100% certainty, but this decode thus far is very revealing and how scripted this all is, especially when we look back to how the last year went. So, and this also aligns well with the thesis of that stock market correction into September, October that I often talk about this year, and with the next Federal Reserve meeting being on July 25th through 26th, this is definitely a setup. So that FOMC meeting is just a month away. Let me show you right here on this federalreserve.gov website. You have this date. That meeting is just a month away. A lot can happen between now and then, especially with launching this FedNow service and this being their first FOMC meeting since the launching of that service. Between the Nixon shock and Reagan's last days as president with Reaganomics and the war on drugs, The Dow Jones moved up a total of 160% during those 17 years. After Nixon's resignation, from the correction into the end of 1974 to the end of basically the next 8 years. So this is a massive recovery that could happen in as little as about 6 to 8 years. Take that note right now, because we're going to talk about some of this stuff in a moment. So it took even a little longer for the NASDAQ to recover back in that time, but it was only operational at the start of 1971, so it's unfair to even consider this. But with today's market being driven by tech stocks and ultimately crypto and blockchain technologies, the future of our economy, and the Federal Reserve has been vocal about that, this means we should be speeding up cycles with more money circulating in the space due to innovation and more convenient on and off ramps for investors compared to the early days. And I think now, after we've made it through this recent bull run and perhaps what we're heading into in 2024, there will be even more innovation, even more volume in the market, more players, more money. And the market cap, we've seen projections of how much this market has to be injected in it and how little has actually been put in this crypto sector. There's so much more money out there, and it hasn't really made its way over into crypto yet. I believe we know enough about Ripple and XRP and these sort of theories of what's to come, especially after the clarity from the SEC and Ripple case. But with all of that on the sidelines, I mean, even if that still doesn't get resolved soon, as we all hope, I believe we will get the market to cycle the same way it did last time into 2024. It's just about what will the washout be between now and then. The washout that could come that I showed you before with this dip down into the end of the year could be absolutely devastating for altcoins. And that is actually what's needed to bring more maturity to this sector, to get a lot of the bad actors out, and to give more attention to things that are the solid players in the game, such as XRP. So that's why it's in my top 3 holdings, Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP. I have that portfolio designed that way because I have a long-term thesis, and I have my venture capital bag, of course, that I play around with, but I'm all about timing that. It's more of a trader's game when you talk about that stuff. When you're talking about longevity and confidence in your investment and what you hold, you want to be a little bit more methodical and more strategic about it, right? And when we saw that 90 to 95% correction happen for a majority of the altcoins in this recent cycle, and how it was no different than what happened back in 2018, and how it was really no different in the cycle before that, it's proven itself that the cyclical nature is still here, and it would take large-scale adoption for that to be different. I hope this all kind of clears up some of those other frequently asked questions that some people have when they join over here. So obviously there is a lot more maturity in the charts of any tech company that survived the dot-com bubble, for instance, and are still operating to this day compared to something like Ethereum, which only has about 7 years of trading history. But with Bitcoin going on its 14th year of chart data, we could compare this example to looking at the 2011 chart for Amazon to give an idea. So we have this Amazon chart, we have this ride up here into what was called the dot-com bubble, a big correction. I mean, I think it lost about 95%, which is literally what Ethereum did in the 2018 correction. And then it recovered into about 2007, which was the next financial crisis. But then after that, once it got on to, let's just say about 10 years in, we started to see this sustainable growth and price discovery that has continued until this day. So this is kind of similar, of what we're seeing in a Bitcoin chart, and perhaps what could be a repeat for something like Ethereum, which ETH had that 95% correction. It came up into new all-time highs. It got up higher than what it took in recovery for Amazon, but it's because it's more innovative. And at the time, it didn't have the same level of speculation. And when we talk about Amazon, it's really hard to be confident in something that was part of the dot-com bubble. I mean, if you were invested, you were sort of like a low-key genius, but not many people trusted it. And that's what crypto is going through today, a lot of distrust. And when you have the FTX thing and Terra Luna and a lot of what happened with Celsius and all these other companies, it makes sense why people are so, the speculation is still there and why they're so, just have a lot of worry. And I don't blame them. In some situations, it's like you kind of get it, right? That was the same case for Amazon. Getting in after that dump was very much, an amazing play if you had that ability to do your research and forecast the future. But ultimately, it's not easy to make those calls. It really is not. I know everyone says they wish they would have done it, but if they were living through that time, they probably wouldn't have done it. So this is just an idea we're sharing. I do plan in the future to maybe get more back into the .com bubble in these older cycles and these older tech companies and see how it compares to today. But let's get through October perhaps, and then we can make some real crisp clarity, regarding our judgment. Now, coming back to Fed Chair Powell, we're talking about, he was born, I want to show this little piece of code that ties just the final bits of the decode together. And that is February 4th, 1953. February 4th. And he was born with 330 days left in the year, which in numerology, you're going to remove that 0. That brings you back to 33. And he is basically the leader of the world's central bank. And you could see central bank gives you 33. And a couple of things that are tying directly to today's decode is Federal Reserve FedNow giving you the 330 in this reverse cipher, and Federal Reserve Board giving you 330 in the same cipher. 330. He was born on the day, leaving 330 days in the year, right at this time, leading on the Federal Reserve Board to launch Federal Reserve's new FedNow service. That 33, the master number of transmutation. Both of those key terms equaling 330, just like he was born on 330 days left in the year. And we have Federal Reserve Board equaling 183. And why that's special is because today, July 1st, let me show you by the code right over here. July 1st is leaving 183 days left in the year, just like Federal Reserve Board equals 183. And tomorrow will be the 183rd day of the year. There was a lot of speculation that this would launch on the 1st. As far as I'm aware, it is not. It will be launching later. Let me get around to that in a moment. But just by the code, we had right here, Federal Reserve Board giving us this 72, just like how Bitcoin, we have that 72. And tomorrow is 7-2 date numerology in Gregorian. Of course, that's more exoteric. But what's interesting, if you consider the esoteric, July actually being your 5th month in the cycle, you have March being your 1st, April, May, June, July being your 5th. This date should actually be written as 5-2 or 2-5, and that ties you back to Rabbit. Right there by the code, that 52 and 25. We're currently in the year of the Rabbit, so that's something to pay attention to. Tomorrow will be a Sunday, so the market will be opening a little bit later. Never mind. I heard that Monday will have a half day for the market and then will be closed on Tuesday for the market because it's 4th of July. So, okay, yeah, I believe we should have CME, precious metals, Dow Jones opening up July 2nd pretty late at night. And then they'll go into Monday. The market will open as usual, take a half day, and then it will close. So it's a very weird day tomorrow. That 24-hour period, probably a lot of volatility, especially with the stock market and the way it was acting into Friday's close. So just keep that in mind. That will be on the esoteric 5-2 date, tied back to Rabbit in this Rabbit year. And of course, we have the word cryptocurrency giving us that 52, and crypto will be trading through all of this 24/7, no breaks. You're well aware of that. Now, the Federal Reserve hasn't been completely transparent about the exact date of the launch of this new FedNow service. On this frbservices.org website, it shows their announcement of launching in late July. You could see that right there. Many have speculated it would be launching as soon as today. So this Decode includes a lot more info referencing the key date as the start of the month, but we're just considering that tie back to Julius Caesar being named after him, his birthday being July 12th, and we shared all that decoding information back from my World Reserve Decoded. So that was kind of like why we're using this as the key date to build a lot of this information off of. But with a quick search on that website I referenced just moments ago, you can actually see a statement where they say right here, launching in late July, right there in our faces. And when you look at the full list of participants and service providers for launch, it does not include Metal Blockchain or Cypherium on the list. So regarding the official organizations that are certified as ready for the FedNow service, so again, we can lay those theories to rest at least at the launch of this program. But one thing to consider perhaps, and it could be this partnership with a service provider called Finastra right here. It's a financial software company based out of London, England. Again, I'd consider doing some additional research into them if you're interested, but I advise you do your research on your own and not get caught up in the theories around how this company will be the ones to flip the switch or whatever. You know, too many people have started to believe in this kind of stuff, and it's a distraction and pure hopium, and it has nothing to do with the truth. If anything, it's just more kindling for the XRP conspiracy bonfire, and that is not the way of the wolf. So here we are, sophisticated researchers, decoders, and esoteric analysts, and we are not thinking outside the box. We are simply reminding each other that there is no box to begin with. That's what allows us to keep our emotions on the sidelines and not fall for this bread and circus the apex predator feeds the masses. So regarding this code, I'm definitely seeing a lot of connections to this year specifically and Jerome Powell's role as the talking head of the operation while this globalist Bolshevik carpet is being rolled out across the realm. Now, as for my thoughts on this thing that we call FedCoin, I personally do not see this happening just yet. But you never know how this could all go down during Chair Powell's current term, which is set to expire on May 15th of 2026, unless he resigns early, which a lot of Federal Reserve Board of Governor members tend to do. At this time, it is pure speculation when this FedCoin will go live. If I had to share my intuition, I would assume that it could actually take until as late as 2029 for the United States of America and to really see the downfall of the US as the powerhouse they are today when we're speaking in terms of their economic position. And I've been very vocal about this with podcasts that I've done with Logan over at Decode Your Reality and Jason of Archaics. I've spoken about this a lot in podcasts and in my live streams, that I think all of this fear porn that's been instilled through a lot of the gold bugs, particularly like E.B. Tucker and these people that are making their rounds on Stansberry Research, these people have been talking about, you know, Bitcoin going to zero and gold going to 4,000 for the last 5 years straight, all saying there's going to be a market crash in housing, all saying that, you know, it's a lot of fear to sell gold, to sell precious metals. And they're the same talking heads that keep perpetuating this idea that FedCoin's going to go now live this month. FedCoin's going to go live. And it's all the same player characters. It's like Peter Schiff on repeat. It just gets boring after a while when you can see through it. So I think the opposite. When I hear all of these so-called professional analysts who are market professionals or whatever they call themselves, and they're speculating that the downfall of the U.S. economy is going to come now, it's making me think we're not even close. Now, I've been very vocal about this against my popularity because a lot of people do want to see the death of the dollar and the death of the U.S. for whatever reason, praying for its downfall, which I feel is very awkward. And I'm by no means sharing this theory because I'm a U.S. citizen and because I have any pride. I could care less. It's a beautiful place, but I'm not committed to any of it. I look at all of this stuff as a sham. Like, we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. It's up to us to be present and to enjoy ourselves while we're here the best we can, and to not be dictated by fear and have all of this kind of mentality of the uppers and downers. And I think that's a lot of what this stuff perpetuates, and it's why people make bad decisions. So for me, I don't really have any stance outside of my decoding. And my decoding has set me to share that I believe it's late 2020, particularly into 2029. And I'm actually going to break that down for you while we're here because it could be very helpful. So this is everything to do with the year of the monkey, which I believe I made a video called the year of the moon key, available on YouTube. You could go check that out if you'd like. And it was about the next Shemitah and how I've linked 1933, which was the year of the rooster, when Executive Order 6102 was signed by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, essentially forbidding the hoarding of gold within the US. And this Gold Reserve Act was essentially a gold confiscation. I actually did make a video about it inside of my crypto mastermind course. So shout out to anyone who invested in my crypto mastermind course. You know, if you've gone through that thoroughly, you have a very good grasp of where I stand with this work. It probably makes a lot of sense to you. If those of you that are newer here, you're not too caught up in some of these terms and ideas I'm sharing, perhaps you could consider investing in that course because it is over 110 videos, includes my exit strategy blueprint completely for free. And it goes into every single thing you need to know to go from a complete beginner in the basics to intermediate and advanced. So it's a solid, comprehensive system. And it also includes the Gematria Masterclass, where I decoded a bunch of different altcoins, the symbology, it all. So if you're interested in the Gematria and combining it all with my system, you'd really love that. And I did talk about that 1933 gold confiscation. So 1933 was the year of the rooster, and the next year of the rooster that we're going to have is 2029, which will be the year after the next Shemitah. And usually we tend to have a bull run leading into a Shemitah, which I showed you earlier when I was showing you the chart with the red boxes, the Dow Jones chart. So we usually have bull runs leading into a Shemitah, which follows up with a dramatic sell-off. This recent iteration of the Shemitah that ended in September 2022 was no different. We were essentially in a downtrend for a majority of the Shemitah, especially for altcoins, most of them losing about 90% of their value from the prior highs around April, May of 2021, which was leading into the Shemitah, as I said earlier. So I don't see this next Shemitah in 2028 being any different, since an overwhelming majority of these Shemitah cycles have had the same pattern regarding market behavior since the invention of the stock market. And that's because the people who invented the stock market are the ones utilizing this calendar and are well aware of Gematria and the esoterica. They're all Kabbalists. So now, a couple of last things to mention why we have the next Federal Reserve FOMC meeting on July 25th and 26th. Let me just go over that again to show you. Perhaps FedNow can actually launch around this date, since the FRB Services website mentions this launching in late July. This is a setup for the month of August, which will have a blue moon. So there are 2 full moons in August, one on the first day and the last day of the month, which is pretty rare. So I'll actually be making a second part to this decode dedicated to the August blue moon, with all of today's decode being the foundation of that next decode I release in a couple weeks. This gives some time to let this one breathe, and you guys could take notes and kind of piece it all together. If there's any, questions you have, I could get around to those in a future live stream. And you could see how the markets react to this month, the start of this month of July, which is already kicking off very bullish with all the indices closing on new weekly highs for the year. So I packed today's presentation with so many gems, and I didn't want it to be overwhelming. I know I talked about leading up to this that I would combine the blue moon and the FedNow Decode together, but I think that wouldn't be the best. I wanted to make this one packed full of value and thought that once I got through it, it would be too much information. So the final gems that I'll leave with you today that are considering the Chinese zodiac on some of these big years for the market, such as 1987. 87 was Black Monday, and then you had the 2000 dot-com bubble, also the 2008 financial crisis of the housing market. So 1987 was a year of the rooster. Sorry, I just wanted to change this one back. And 1987 was a year of the rabbit, which is the year we're actually in now. And the market went up into August and then had one of the fastest crashes in stock market history, mainly due to the inclusion of computers being more popular at trading desks. So this made it so that you could have more convenient trades and allowed for higher volume. Now in 2000, that was the year of the dragon, which will be next year. That was the dot-com bubble. The market went up into March of 2000 and then cratered and went on a 2-year downtrend, with the NASDAQ getting hit the hardest. Then in 2008, that was the year of the rat. The last year of the rat was in 2020, which was the year of the C-19 crash. And it was also the year that the Titanic sank, 1912, which led to the creation of the Federal Reserve System, which is what today's Decode is all about. That was back in 1913 when the Federal Reserve launched. So now a couple things to mention is those 3 years that I isolated were all Shemitah years. And I mentioned the year of the rabbit back in 1987, which led to that big crash in October after the market topped out in August, but it was still in a Shemitah year. So that's a very important point to mention because we are not in a Shemitah year right now. So the 2000 dot-com bubble example, also during the Shemitah, and with us not being in a Shemitah anymore and even completely out of the Jubilee when we're transitioning into the year of the dragon next year, I'm actually bullish on crypto during the year of the dragon in 2024, regardless of what happened back in that 2000 timeframe. So just wanted to clear that up for everyone in case you were wondering. And we talked earlier about the 1970s and my comparison to the last Jubilee about 50 years ago and that big correction back in August of 1974 after Nixon's resignation, or around Nixon's resignation. And 1975 was a year of the rabbit, like we're in today. And that year also had a recovery for the stock market all the way until July, and then there was a short-term sell-off into October. Interesting, right? We pretty much saw the same structure back in 2011, which was the last year of the rabbit, the market moving up into July, followed by a sell-off into October, and of course, the dramatic example I brought up earlier with 1987. I mean, this is pretty amazing stuff, guys, how you can start to utilize the Chinese zodiac to see all of these big moves that happen in these financial markets. So again, that dramatic example that I brought up back here of 87 leading into Black Monday, which some of you might be aware of from the beginning of that movie Wolf of Wall Street, where the firm he was working at called L.F. Rothschild collapsed during that market crash. So to me, it really seems like this setup into late July with the launch of the FedNow service and that next FOMC meeting following with the blue moon in August and all the examples of sell-offs through August into the month of October. This really solidifies my thesis on a buying opportunity to come in the fall time around October. And as I've said so many times back in April and in May and in June, that I feel that there will be one more leg up for the crypto market, even though we had the solar eclipse to consider. And although we did have a correction after the lunar eclipse in May and Mercury station retrograde, now today we can see Bitcoin has officially tested 31,000, at least 4 daily candles. And I believe it's about 5 daily candles have actually closed above the April 14th highs. So let me just clear all this out. You can kind of see what I'm talking about here. And there we go. These were the April 14th highs that I was mentioning. And then we had this sell-off into the eclipse. Then we rose up into this lunar eclipse and then a deeper sell-off into just a couple weeks ago. Since we've actually rallied perfectly back to the prior price levels and have hit some new microcycle highs. So all we need now is an actual push up into about 32,000 with some volume and hitting that macro 0.5 fib. I believe I've talked about this on many Red Pill podcasts, so I'm not going to bore you guys today, but that 0.5 fib from the 69,000 all-time high to the swing low here of November 2022, sitting there at about 32,700. So if we could get to around 33, and proving essentially my analysis without a shadow of a doubt that we would be finalizing this automatic rally theory into the mid 30K level before having a more substantial pullback below 20K. And so far, that's exactly how it's going. So that last decode that I released called World Reserve Decoded is actually coming to life. And I'm glad that I was instantly open-minded to the months of June and July as a wild card in this whole post-Shemitah cycle analysis. And that's why we looked for flaws in the sell in May and go away quote. And it's so sad that so many people have judged this work without realizing that nuance, because it was so critical to be aware that no one was talking about definitively selling in May, except if you held an isolated project that hit your targets based on your investment thesis, which is ultimately what I teach. But I was very adamant in that part 2 decode called Sell in May and Go Away, followed into that World Reserve Decoded, that I wanted to dig deeper for flaws and anomalies so that I could have more clarity on how the following months would play out. And here we are. But of course, if anyone actually watched those 2 decodes, they know exactly where I was coming from. You're a true wolf for actually investing your attention. So I hope you all enjoyed today's decode. It's really actually part 3 in a series built off of the World Reserve Decoded I just spoke about moments ago. I'm looking forward to some of your thoughts on this new FedNow service in the comments section below. Feel free to share some of your theories around this so-called Fed coin and when you might believe that it'll go live. Like I shared earlier, I see the USA being in the clear until 2029 after that next Shemitah, with that year being a pivotal time. So of course, between now and then is a 6-year time frame, and many things will happen on the world stage, possibly even as soon as the next couple months with the president of the USA. But we are prepared regardless, and ultimately the USD, I believe, will remain the cleanest dirty laundry. And I see many currencies around the world continuing to fail in death spiral, and the smartest and most sophisticated investors in any of those nations have already de-risked their local currency for US dollars back in 2020 and 2021, the latest. And as other currencies fail, the USD essentially becomes stronger. Again, I'm not calling it good, I'm not calling it bad, I'm just saying that the USD is the cleanest dirty laundry. And something we could touch on in the next decode is Christine Lagarde mentioning that the Euro Central Bank would make their decisions on the digital euro sometime in September or October of this year. It's perfectly in my timeline, and since the euro makes up about 57% of the weight of the USD basket, it's really making me think about how this could all go down. But it sounds like Europe will definitely go through some ritual in the end of this year, and I see the Balkan nations playing a key role in that, as I already shared in my theory around Nikola Jokic being the NBA player who received the most prana this year, playing for the team that won the NBA Finals, the Denver Nuggets, and the most important tennis player right now, Novak Djokovic. And both athletes are from Serbia. And of course, the recent ritual with Andrew Tate being arrested in Romania and now being charged by Romanian authorities again with potentially 20 years in their jail. So this digital euro concept plays into the Fed coin idea and CBDCs in these bigger, more first world nations. I have so much to get into in that future decode in the August blue moon. I hope you guys are looking forward to that, and I hope you guys enjoyed today's decode. Again, we have to wait and see for the actual official launch date for this and when it goes live, but we know that there's something nefarious that will go down at the end of July into the month of August, and I'm keeping my eyes on this next FOMC meeting between now and then. I do see that this market will remain bullish for the next couple weeks. We have to get through this full moon time frame, and leading into that next new moon, which will actually be before those meetings on July 17th. So I'm going to leave it at that. I appreciate every single one of you. I am wishing you guys a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I'll have the new Red Pill podcast released tomorrow. Much love.